All righty, we are live. This is Jeff from Indiana Preparedness, um, and I am with Mark, and I'm going to try to read Mark's bio here. A little bit of a bio. Mark is a former firefighter, emergency medical technician, and corrections officer who served in the United States Marine Corps and in the United States Army. Thank you for your service, Mark.
Thank you.
He has authored several internationally selling books and has been a presenter at several national safety and health conferences. He's also organized preparedness trade shows and been in the preparedness lifestyle for 3 decades. He has both been a member and an officer in multiple different preparedness groups in different parts of the country. Thank you for joining me tonight, Mark.
Glad to be here.
Good. And I'm Jeff from Indiana Preparedness. I don't nearly have that kind of a roster. I've been into preparedness casually for maybe 10 years, maybe 12 years or something like that. And I am a casual prepper. I am a newbie prepper. So yeah, but I'm hungry to learn. So, but we are discussing multiple different things. But I think, Mark, you wanted to talk about start us off with sort of the financial situation that's going on in the country these days. It seems to have warrant quite a bit of concern.
Yeah, absolutely. And please, Jeff, allow me to preface this by saying I am not a financial advisor. I'm not, this is strictly my opinion and my take on this. I would hate for anyone to construe this as, well, that guy said I need to. No, this, so obviously in the last week or so, we've seen the failure of a couple of very large banks. Actually, it's 3. We only hear about the 2, Silicon Valley Bank and the one in New York, Signature. But a couple of days before Silicon Valley, there was another one called Silver Lake which was primarily a crypto-based bank, and that was, the bulk of their business. But they actually went into receivership as well. And the ripples through the economic community have been, pretty intense, needless to say, involving all of this. I just saw a thing, I want to say last night, because I wrote it down on the pad sitting here, that Silicon Valley has actually officially filed for bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really big deal. They were the 16th largest bank in the United States. Staggering amount of, billions in assets, et cetera. And there's a lot of uncertainty going on. I mean, the Dow has certainly reflected that. I mean, 3 things that I check at least 3 times a day as I can, work schedule allowing and stuff. I take a look at the Dow. I take a look at the price of oil. I take a look at the price of gold, because it helps me kind of judge, if this one's doing this, then ideally that one should be doing that, but it's not. I mean,
those are your canaries.
Right. Well, yep. Friday, we saw gold go up $70 in one single day. It's one of the largest increases. I actually had to jump on Google and find out. Turns out it was not the single largest day increase ever. That was $90 quite some time back. But $70 for the price of gold in one day is just really, really alarming to me.
Yeah. Do you think that could be panic buying?
I think definitely. I watched an interesting video this morning. Canadian Prepper put out earlier this morning and he had talked to a gold broker at one of the places, that he does business with. And that broker told Nate that they had, this past week, they set and shattered all kinds of sales records. And it was, people wanted physical gold, not what's known as gold bonds, which is, hey, I have this piece of paper saying I own, X number of ounces. No, they want the physical, metal. Silver's been up. And again, it's nowhere approaching record highs. I mean, at one point, silver was almost $50 an ounce.
Yeah.
But the fact that people are moving money out of banks, out of crypto, into physical tangible assets, I think is very noteworthy.
Yeah, and I think there was that bank. I mean, the fact that it seems like the financial problems here in America are affecting across the globe, right? I mean, we
Oh,
are
absolutely. And
very well integrated into a global economy, and so what was the bank that went under that the Swiss had to come in and help them?
Credit Suisse, which is actually
Yes.
one of the other things Credit Suisse got an emergency loan from the Central Bank of Switzerland to the tune of about $45 billion. But article I saw this morning was that there was an emergency meeting of Credit Suisse board of directors today. But they're in serious financial trouble. And Credit Suisse is a massive financial firm. I mean, they have over $500 billion in money that they're responsible for.
Yeah.
So the Saudi backers who do a lot of business with Credit Suisse flat told them this week, no more money from us. That's how, again, my take on it. The Saudis, are basically saying we don't have enough confidence in you, to help you out.
Right.
I did a little bit of research on Credit Suisse's stock value. Over the last year, it's gone down over almost 70%. I mean, just steady decline. And I believe it was either Thursday or Friday, the stock decreased almost 25% in value in one day.
Yeah.
So the ripple effects, as you very correctly pointed out, with Silicon Valley going down. And I thought it was noteworthy that the state regulators waited till late Friday afternoon to go in and, shut the bank down, and then over the weekend turn it over to the control of the FDIC, Federal Depositors Insurance Corporation.
Yep.
Because if that had been like a Tuesday, they at least had the weekend to kind of, the financial markets could take a deep breath, see what they were going to do, et cetera. And I think that's another reason that when the New York state regulators did the same thing to Signature, they did it on Sunday afternoon. They did not do it, during the trading week. So the Dow's been just wildly swinging. Again, precious metal prices are all over the place. But interestingly enough, oil has actually been down. I live in Oklahoma where, energy production is a really significant part of the economy here. And we're not seeing, massive amounts of drilling and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of the oil companies around here. I live about an hour or so west of Oklahoma City, but the town I live in is right on I-40.
Yeah.
And so, we see everything going back and forth. And there's basically about 3 rigs between here and Oklahoma City, which is about an hour's drive. And that's it. That's all you can see in that stretch. I've lived here about 13 years now. And, I can tell you 10 years ago, you almost couldn't throw a rock and not, hit some kind of energy company vehicle,
Yeah.
On the back roads, the highways. And boy, it has not been that way for the last couple of years. So it's very telling.
Yeah, I was reading an article earlier today too about how families they're going more in debt and spending more of their savings, even after post COVID 2021. Families in general were in better shape across the country. This was America based, and but now with all the COVID relief gone and still not making enough money based on the inflation of what they're spending in the grocery store, people are having to tap into credit and they're having to tap into their savings account. And, I got to tell you, Mark, to me, a lot of this is, if I see here, there's a part of me that goes, okay, this is just more the panic. This is more, if we go back to 2008 and 2010, when, my favorite show, Doomsday Preppers, came out, right? Almost, there was probably 60 to 70% of all of the preppers that were on that show talking about financial collapse of the United States, right?
Yeah.
That was the big fear.
Yes,
We were in a recession, and it was legitimate, right? And I was told on those shows and from people that I knew that within 3 to 5 years we would suffer a collapse, that there would be a major collapse. Well, obviously that never happened. 3 to 5 years went by, 6, 10 years went by, and we recovered. So to me, there was a little bit of almost a little bit of a boy that cries wolf, right? Type of situation. And as I sit here and I look at the banks collapsing and the people, the families that are struggling and the inflation and all this other good stuff, there's still a part of me that sits here and goes, okay, it's going to rebound. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. But then another part of me is like, okay, frog in boiling water. Right.
Yep.
And if we go back 2 years and if we had the same situation that we're in right now, like there, we'd be going, oh shit. Right.
Yeah.
We'd be going like, this is bad, but it's just ratcheting up in small little degrees and small little implements. And it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And, right now, about the only good thing that I've seen is the job market. Job market's still good. There's jobs out there. But, and I can tell you the company that I work for, we do IT and we do corporate level information security.
Okay.
And we have been looking for a couple of positions to fill. And the candidates that we're getting in are relatively qualified, but they're asking for anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 more per year than what the standard salary base is for those positions. And we're just like, what? It's like you only have, a moderate amount of experience and training and education, and you want 10 to 20 grand more. And the only thing that we can think of is the fact that they know that they're going to need to make more money because of the inflation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, they're coming in and they're saying, sorry, I got to have this salary amount right here. So yeah, the jobs are out there, but the employers aren't necessarily either willing or able to pay the employees to compensate for the inflation that they're going to have to spend on buying things. So it is kind of frightening, but let me ask you this. Overall, as preppers, why do we care? What is the threat to people who lead just every day off the street kind of Joes like you and I? What is the threat of all of these big banks failing and all this other stuff? What is the threat from a preparedness perspective? It's not like a tornado is going to be coming in,
right?
But
okay, this may get a tad long-winded, but one of I've been doing seminars and giving workshops and stuff for a number of years now, and I'll be the very first one to tell you and anybody that's willing to listen, I am not the be all end all of preparedness knowledge. I mean, I still learn stuff all the time, and I think that's great because it's like, I've had people ask me over the years, well, what's the best prepping book to get? Well, what topic do you want? I mean, Carl Amory's Encyclopedia of Country Living is a fantastic resource. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's, it's literally this thick and great book. Does it cover everything? No, unfortunately. There is no one place to go to. And so I really like your question because it's a valid one in that, okay, here I'm sitting in a little town, rural Western Oklahoma, some bank in California, gets shut down. What does that mean to me? My little two location bank that I do business with and have for years, no big deal. A lot of it has to do with trust and liquidity. Okay. Do you trust the bank, where your money is? Okay. And it's important to remember people who have money in checking accounts, from the time you deposit it, that's not actually your money anymore. You are loaning that money to the bank because unlike savings account, which in the vast majority of states and stuff, savings accounts are considered what's known as on-demand account, meaning if you got $5,000 in checking, you got $5,000 in savings. By law, they have to provide you the savings account money. They can legally take longer to get you your money out of checking. Okay. So the liquidity issue is really the biggest part of that. And this, like I said, may get a little convoluted and long-winding, and I'm going to apologize in advance, but bank failure in California, bank failure on the East Coast. Okay. You got a lot of people who are understandably skittish about, hey, that's my life savings, whatever. I'm going to get some of that out. Banks, as a rule, tend not to keep large amounts of cash on hand. One, it's a security issue. Well, if they don't have, $2 million in cash sitting in the vault, they're a whole lot less likely to get robbed if they've got, just a percentage of that. Because there's only so much cash floating out there in the system, okay? Because, money gets torn, money gets dirty, it gets pulled out of circulation, gets taken back into Federal Reserve locations located around the country, and then, swapped out for newer, cleaner, et cetera, kind of money. So there's not a massive amount of actual cash. So people withdrawing a lot of cash creates uncertainty, creates chaos. It strains that supply system because cash is just like any other commodity. There's a finite amount. So what we as preppers, how it concerns us, well, if people lose trust in their bank, they stop paying their bills. Okay. Well, I better hang on to, let me not send that credit card payment in for 2 or 3 more days. Okay. Because I want to see what goes on. I'm going to go get some of my money out. Okay. But to branch off your question, what percentage of people in the United States do you think there are who think like we do? I can tell you right now, it's not a very high percentage.
Right.
Sure, there's people who have, I got 3 weeks of food in my house. Okay, that's great. Is that with or without power being on?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there's a bank holiday. Do you remember the situation that happened in Crete about, I want to say 5-6 years ago? People went to bed one night, woke up, found half of the money, literally 50% of the money they had in all of their accounts been taken by the government in order to shore up, the country's economy. They lost 50% of all their money, everybody.
Yep.
And it's like, and they've never gotten a penny of that back.
Yep.
Okay. So how it affects us, well, people rush out and they get worried because, I better go get more food in the house. Okay. I'm going to go get more gas. I'm going to go get cash out and things. So it starts to strain the supply system. But you have people, unfortunately, out there, simple economics and life situations, who don't have the means to go do that. So now you've got more people who are potentially at risk if there is any kind of systemic issue. One of the questions I get asked quite often when I'm doing workshops and stuff like that, what's my biggest fear if there's a crisis? My answer has been the same for years. And the answer is, quite honestly, my neighbors. And they're decent, moral, hardworking, they're good people. Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
But the scenario I like to pose to people, it's like, okay, it's July, it's day 4 without power or city water. You're hot, you're tired, you're thirsty. Information is very scarce. What are you going to do to make sure that your children are provided for?
Yeah.
The exact same thing I would do in that situation, whatever I have to. I mean, that's the bottom line. So there's always going to be a criminal element out there that, that hasn't changed. If you take 100 people at random, your criminal element may be 1 or 2 out of that 100. Okay. Then you have 3 or 4 people who, and I think I'm being a little generous, who are like us. Well, hello, that still leaves 90 plus people, i.e. my neighbors, who don't know what to do. It becomes that mob mentality.
Yeah.
So what we as preppers are at risk of is simply being overwhelmed. It took me a long time to get to that point.
Yeah, the social breakdown. And I mean, I think that we saw that. I think that we saw that in 2020. I mean, 2020 was almost a perfect storm. You had the pandemic, you had racial tensions, you had political tensions, right? And it was just almost every situation. Thankfully, in my area, we didn't have a lot of the issues. We had some of the racial protesting, but they didn't turn violent. They didn't turn into the riots. And I don't have a problem with that. You want to go out and protest, that's part of our country. That's part of your right. It's when things
Sure.
get out of hand, destruction of property, you get the looters, you get the people who provoke, and all that good stuff. And back in 2016, we had a tornado come through and knocked out power for 3.5 days. And my youngest son, who he's always been kind of my prepper buddy, right? He was 12 at the time, I think. And, I told him, I said, everything's great now. Everybody's out there helping each other.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's, if they don't need power, they're sharing their generators with folks who are diabetic and have to keep their insulin cold, all this other stuff. I said, if this were to go on longer, if this were to go on, like you said, 4 or 5 days or longer, and there's no communication from the local authorities or the utilities about power being restored, I said, things are going to get heated. We're probably going to have a lot of protests. I think that, and this is kind of a good thing, I think that you would have a lot of people pack up and move someplace else. They would essentially evacuate. They would bug out, right? Is what we would call it. And that's good. And then you might have some government agencies or volunteer agencies coming in and supplying some emergency goods like FEMA, Red Cross, and things like that. But depending on how bad the situation got, like what we saw, I think it was in Seattle 2 years ago. Seattle got turned pretty bad, right?
Yeah.
There was a total breakdown in control and total breakdown in authority. And that's pretty scary. So as preppers, I hate the politics and I really hate the finances, but at the same time, your everyday life can be affected by politics and by finances, global scale finances. If things go really wrong, that can cause a disruption. If your utility company goes bankrupt, and you lose water and you lose power, what are you going to do now? So,
well, and you've had cities go bankrupt before, especially all these larger metropolitan areas. I mean, they have huge overhead, in labor costs for, countless city employees. You've got pension funds they have, they're supposed to be funding. They have, trying to provide services, which are costing more and more and more. But, you've literally had cities who've had to file bankruptcy before, which
Mm-hmm.
is just insane. I mean, and so, again, circling back to your previous question, what do we have to worry about? Well, and there's micro and there's macro concerns too, okay? In September 1999, I was the director of safety and security for a federal facility in Southwest Virginia. Okay. It was a great job. I really, really liked it. Had a lot of potential. The company, I worked for a private company who managed a federal facility under contract. Okay. Came home from work one Saturday. That was my Friday. I was home about 10 minutes. My pager went off. Oh, hey, I got a fire call. Oh man, this is going to be a good day. No problem. Done this at this point, I'd been in the fire service for, multiple years, my then wife hollered at me, hey, are you going? I'm like, yeah. Okay. See you when you get back. I mean, we'd been through this routine, I don't know how many times.
Mm-hmm.
Drove to the station, got my gear on, one of the other guys showed up. I went around to get in the truck, and the next conscious thing I can remember, it's 5.5 hours later, and I'm in surgical ICU at the Regional Trauma Center. Well, the other guy had showed up drunk, which I didn't know at the time, obviously. And he drove us off a cliff going to the fire.
Holy cow.
Oh, yeah. I was in a hospital. I'm permanently partially disabled now because that guy made a decision for me, so the person I was that morning, was not the guy I was that night. And it completely changed, our situation. I was off work for obviously quite a while, but because we had, I mean, like I said, I was married at the time. We had 3 kids at home. But our menu didn't change one bit because we had such an extensive pantry. So what money we did have coming in, we took care of the rent, and groceries basically was milk, bread, and eggs. That's the only thing we, kind of had to have.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, by the time I was able to go back to work on pretty much a full-time basis, yeah, we had put a serious dent in our on-hand stuff. But again, the menu never changed. Now, not my first paycheck after going back to work, but my second one, oh yeah. Drove to the nearest Sam's Club, which was about 45 minutes from the house, and we started replenishing it. I mean, obviously it took us a while, but woke up one day that morning and life was, this way. And by that night, I'm an hour's drive away in a regional trauma center fighting for my life. And, everything about our lives at that point from that day forward was completely different. So it's not just about these huge, one of the great terms, and I know you know this, in the preparedness community, the end of the world as we know it. Well, it's not about the world necessarily like the world at large coming to an end, but the end of the world as we know it happens to people every single day all around the world.
Yep.
Loss of a spouse, loss of a job, illness, vehicle accident, loss of a parent. I mean, the reasons go on and on and on.
The personal
apocalypse. Yeah, exactly. So the end of the world as we know it literally is a daily event, unfortunately, for somebody. Okay. Yeah. My day was September 18th, 1999. And I'm still living with the repercussions. It's March 2023. I'm permanently partially disabled. I had to give up that career I had because I couldn't physically do the job anymore.
Yeah.
That's why
Yeah. My wife always said you're one medical emergency away from bankruptcy.
You literally.
And it kind of doesn't matter how wealthy you are.
Nope.
If it's big enough. And
what is your health worth? What's the dollar value to put on your health? I mean, so fortunately the fire department's insurance, paid for all the doctor's bills and stuff like that. But again, what I lost, I've got nerve damage in different parts of me. My left shoulder is completely artificial, and I only have about 70% range of motion. So, I couldn't be a cop anymore. I couldn't be a firefighter anymore. And it took, a really long time to have to learn that adjustment. I got PTSD out of the situation. And unfortunately, that brought about a few years later, the end of my marriage, and not my ex-wife's fault at all. I mean, I just wasn't somebody she could live with anymore. And I respect that. So when I go, and I do these seminars and stuff like that, and when I'm talking, and I've got whatever size group there is, and I'm talking to them about how these, one thing can change your life. I'm not talking about it from a theoretical perspective. I'm talking about it like this is, my reality every single day. And so I had to make adjustments in like how I prep. Like I used to have a much heavier bug out bag than I do now because physically my body won't, I can't handle a heavier one. So I have to be incredibly judicious with, what I do have in there, how it gets used, how much of it, I'm constantly on the lookout for new technologies like, ooh, yes, I have one of those, but this one does the same thing and it's smaller and lighter.
Yeah.
So, it's, and so it's things like that. I mean, we have to adjust to. I think one of the best tools that preppers have is it's our ability to adapt because we have to. My parents, like I said, I live in Oklahoma. My parents live in Indiana, up hour and a half northwest Indianapolis, roughly. And, they've wanted me to move back home for years. And that would be great. But the problem is I can't tolerate the winters up there because of all the metal and plastic and stuff I have in me. I don't function well in really cold weather. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
I love Indiana, but
this winter has been very very mild, but it's been like February. I think the average temperatures were in the 40s and the 50s through the whole month.
yeah,
It's just ridiculous, and we didn't get any precipitation, no snow, no rain for the entire month of February, which is just unheard of. But today, I'm looking at a temperature of 20 degrees outside. It's it is all over the place. But
take a coin. What's it going to be today?
yeah. But that's kind of one of the things that I try to preach a little bit too when I talk to people about preparedness is I call them disruptions. When I'm in those CERT meetings and things like that, we always talk about weather disasters, weather this and weather that, and or even maybe chemical spills. But when I say disruption, I mean you get up one day, you go to work, you come home, you kiss your wife, you eat dinner, you go to bed, you get up and you do the same thing the next day, right? That's your normal life, vacations and things like this is your normal life. So a disruption is anything that literally disrupts that, whether it's a medical emergency or within your own work or whatever, something that's going to disrupt. And that's the things that we need to prepare for. And that's kind of really what I, emphasize. And kind of circling back around that, financial collapses, I mean, imagine going to the bank to pull out your $5,000 out of your savings account and they tell you we can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, what? That's my money,
Well, okay, but imagine instead of 5,000, Jeff, what if you've only got $271 in there? And that's like,
that's your groceries.
You're planning to use exactly. You're going to put gas in the car, you're going to get some groceries and stuff, and you're told, well, I'm sorry, there's going to be a delay on that. Or the bank's not even open because of a bank holiday.
Yeah.
What do you do? I mean, it's because there's far more people in that type of situation, than people with loads of money in it. And I mean, it's when you don't have, 10 days worth of food in your house, if the power's still on, that's a problem. I was working with I had a client for a long time down in North Texas, really super nice people. And I used to go down for about a week at a time, and we'd work on a variety of prep projects around their place and, get stuff done. She's a nurse, and she called me and said, hey, there's some paperwork on the kitchen table. Can you run it over? It was like 4 streets over from where they lived because she needed it for a client. She was doing some home health stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure. No problem. Happy to. Ran it over there, and she's like, hey, I want you to see something. Took me in and opened the pantry. Okay. I was just absolutely blown away. I actually had more food in my truck, in my emergency stuff, than these people had in their pantry. Wow. It was a sleeve of crackers. They shopped. They, according to my, my client, because she worked with these people, they shopped every single day for whatever they were going to have that night.
Yeah.
Their fridge had a couple of condiments in it, and a gallon. They had literally no food in their home.
Yeah.
And I've heard about these people these kinds of people for years. And I was like, that's got to be one of those urban myths. Nope.
No.
I can tell you, I literally had more food in my bug out bag in their house. And I'm like, okay, that's terrifying.
In 2018, I lived in an apartment. I had moved out. My divorce was finalized. My first marriage was done, and my divorce was finalized. And I was hauling groceries up one day, and a young guy across the hall from me, he was going in, and he was like, "Oh, I went grocery shopping." And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, I don't do that. I go grocery shopping every day. I buy my food every day." And I thought, well, okay. But I'm like, if something happens, and you think of those people, and what did they do at the beginning of 2020 when we went on the lockdown?
Yeah.
And it was risky to go to the grocery store. COVID aside, there was, fights and everything else for the toilet paper because, what if you get caught
because of that? Yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy.
And now you are exposing yourself to the crazies that are out there.
Yes.
You know,
And how much are you going to be able to get, and how long is it going to last? Because we are a very consumption-based society. You know,
Right.
it's we are everything's disposable, everything's quick and easy, and you know, I've lived in Las Vegas 2 different times. Back in the 90s when I was single, and in the early 2000s when I was married. We ended up living down there for a while.
Yeah.
And Las Vegas is a fascinating city, but it was, you could literally, and again, I realize you can do this now pretty much everywhere, but you know, again, 30 years ago, this really wasn't the case.
Uh-huh.
One of the richest guys in the valley, he opened a chain of drive-through dry cleaning stores. Okay. And they were all over the Vegas Valley. I mean, there had to have been, I don't know, good Lord, 2-3 dozen of these things. And the guy was making money by the wheelbarrow full. And, you know, and kudos to him. He came up with a great idea and made it work for him. But, you know, you could get in your car, you could do your banking, get dinner, get your dry cleaning, get your prescription picked up, and never get out of the car, you know, and go home. Right when I got out of the Marines in '89, I was working in the oil field in Arkansas for a time. And the bank I was with was just getting ready to start adding Saturday hours. Okay. Which again, nowadays is like, you know, duh.
Yeah.
But they actually had a couple of tellers quit because, well, I'm not going to work on Saturday. And I'm thinking to myself, that's not a smart move.
Yeah.
Because you could see that trend, you know, going more towards service base. I mean, that time in Vegas, the shopping center across the street, the grocery store, they had a bank branch in the, you know, the grocery store. You could sit down and talk to somebody about a home loan at 7:30 on a Saturday night with a real person.
Yeah.
So,
and then go buy eggs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's what you're getting the home loan.
Price of what you can get them for today.
That's what you were getting the home loan for.
Yeah, exactly.
Buy the eggs.
Oh man, well, I'm going to put I need 18 eggs, so I'm going to put my house up as collateral. Well, sir, you're only going to be able to get a dozen. But because we're such a consumption base, you know, everything's disposable, everything's, you know, use it and be done with it kind of thing. We don't tend to, and I'm trying to avoid sounding overly generalized here, but as a society, we don't tend to put money into things that last. You know, well, if something goes bad, well, screw, I'll go buy another one. Well, you know, like we were talking about before, you know, we got started about, that's why I'm looking at doing, you know, repair work and fabrication and stuff like that, because that's going to be a useful service. You know, a lot of people don't know how to fix things, you know?
Yeah, it is. And I think that, it's kind of funny. We in this household, we try to find line. We've got, so at the beginning of COVID, we had a fairly well stocked basement.
Okay.
But we shop every 2 weeks. And when the lockdown happened, we were actually in Tennessee on vacation. We'd gone to the Smoky Mountains, me and my wife.
Beautiful area.
I know. Yeah. And, we were on the way back, and we were getting text messages that they were going to shut down the borders in the States, and we weren't going to be able to get back into Indiana. You know, you get all the panic, you get all the anxiety.
Oh yeah.
But we got back, and they were like, yeah, don't go out. Don't go anywhere. And we walked in, and we were on the downturn of our grocery cycle. And so our pantry was a little on the thin side. And so I don't want to say we were panicked, but the biggest thing that got to us was rice. We couldn't find rice. We were okay on almost every other staple and every other consumable that we normally ran with, but it was things like rice and potatoes and some of those things that we couldn't find. And I actually had a buddy that I used to work with who offered me a couple of bags of rice. We didn't take them because we ended up finding some more. But to me, we never had to tap into our preps, and that would have made me really panic, because it's now like Did I calculate right? Did I do it right? Do I have enough, to last us until we can recover?
Yeah.
Um,
Because we didn't know when that was going to be.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Oh, okay. You got 6 months. What if it's 8? What if it lasts for 8 months? But pretty shortly after that, my sister ended up coming down or coming up and visiting us. And she kind of got a glance in our pantry. And she was like, wow, that is a well-stocked pantry. And it's like, yeah, we got a lot of food in the house. And that's even before we have to tap into the preps. But that's one of those things where being into the preparedness lifestyle, I'm a little bit on the, I could have done that better. You know what I mean? I could have done that better. But here's another thing, Mark, and we can. I think that this might be our next topic. I think is are you doing anything that you shouldn't be, but it's situational or something like that. For instance, we bought a new vehicle about 3 or 4 months ago, and it's an electric vehicle. It is I know, here it comes.
There's that face. Sorry.
I get it. I know. So it is a 100% electrical vehicle.
Okay.
We love it. It is fast. It is
quiet.
Oh yeah. It is money efficient.
Okay.
And we use it as a commuter vehicle. My wife works downtown Indianapolis, and she drives in using it. And that's pretty much all we use it for. Is the commuting, getting around town. It is a putter.
Okay.
Then we have our truck, and the truck, we've got a 2021 Ford Ranger. Keep it at half gas, half tank, and the whole standard, right? So yeah, that's how we run. We're looking at upgrading the truck here pretty soon too, which I know in this economy is bad, but I think we need a bigger truck to haul our camper that we have.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I've cut some crap about. But that I'm telling you, the EV is EMP goes off and it's a brick. But the charging stations are more and more everywhere.
Yeah, they are.
And I work with a guy who has the same vehicle, but maybe 2 years older. And he said, he's taken it cross-country trips multiple times. He said the only thing, he said it has a GPS in it. Will tell you where the charging stations are. He says, and
they are much more commonplace than they used to be.
Yeah.
I mean, even here in, my little rural town, Western Oklahoma, there's a 3-station or a 3-unit station in the parking lot of the Walmart here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
and it only takes, on those fast chargers, it only takes maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes to go from almost nothing to full charge. And, if you think about when you take your gas vehicle into the gas station and put the hose in there, turn it on, go in and get your pop or whatever, come back out, it's about the same amount of time. I don't know. It's been an experience. We had an outlet installed in the garage so we can charge. We bought a fast charger here so we can charge our vehicle in about 7 hours on our home, and it's really helped us on gas and things like that. But I get it. It's a new technology. People are concerned about the batteries. People are concerned about, you can't take it, willy-nilly, out on a road trip and things like that. But so far it's been nothing but positive.
Right. But it's like so many other things. Everything has a limitation. The client I mentioned down, in Texas in our previous conversation, for a while, she had one of those hybrid Fords and like the SUV one, it would start off electric and then go to gas.
Yeah.
It was very, very comfortable to sit in, easy to drive, etc. But right in the front of the manual, you couldn't tow anything with it, nothing, because it started out in electric mode. So, so here you've got this nice, SUV that can hold 5 people and groceries and stuff, but you couldn't tow anything with it. Not even just something small because of the engine type. So, there's give and take and there's drawbacks,
Yeah.
but to answer your question directly, am I doing anything that, I'm not necessarily jump up and down excited about? Well, funny you should bring that up, because literally this morning I went to the local Tractor Supply and I bought a utility trailer, but I put it on my Tractor Supply, credit card,
Oh.
because I just didn't. I know. Again, there's that face.
Yeah.
It's a conversation my son, who's 25 and lives with me, really went back and forth about. And, do I do it? Because I had paid off so many of the cards, and I was making some progress. And now it's like, well, maybe we should build one. And we looked at several different ones, and the first one we looked at was like $2,300, and then we looked at this one, we looked at that one, and then ended up, I don't want to say settled, but we decided on this one because, again, the utility of having it, because I've got a full size 97 pickup with an extended cab, 4-wheel drive. So between that and so there's jobs right around the place that we can use it for. Our friends are constantly, I was borrowing a trailer from a guy for a long time, and then, he ended up having to sell it, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, and it was just fun that, like, the utility of having it, I needed it. Plus, it does have the capability of, if we do have to go someplace, well, I can certainly take a lot more in the truck and the trailer.
Yeah.
So was it something, the whole time I'm standing there at the register, it's like, I don't want to do this.
We live in a system, and the thing with a lot of preppers is either you're either preparing for that system to fail, on some way, or you get the preppers who just want to divorce themselves from the system altogether.
Yeah,
I don't think that that's possible.
I completely agree, and I know that it's not, because there's no. I did some work with a friend of mine a while back out in Vegas. He was working for this multimillionaire, and I mean, my friend's whole job for 2 years, he was paid well into 6 figures each year. The guy bought him a full size, 4-wheel drive pickup, because what my friend's job was to find a location, facilitate buying it, and then the intent was it was going to be a retreat for this multimillionaire and approximately 40, people he had selected. And it was when I was still married, and we went up to Northern Nevada to look at this place. And I mean, it was well over 1,000 acres. It was hours from the nearest interstate. And I mean, it would have made a really good location. And in the end, the multimillionaire ended up hooking up with this gal and marrying her, and she had come from very humble background, and now that she was nouveau riche, well, they just weren't going to spend any kind of money on that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
So she talked her, hubby into firing my friend and this and that. Well, he and I talked about it on multiple occasions, and it was interesting because, here he and I were in a, substantially less endowed, financial system, but yet we were far more prepared for something to actually happen than a guy, who could write, multi-million-dollar checks a day.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it's about mindset. And I mean, would it have been an ideal setup? Yeah. I mean, because we collectively, the group my friend was putting together to help with this, it was ex-military guy, another law enforcement guy like myself. And my ex-wife was very confident, worked in the medical field for years and stuff like that. So, we were bringing a lot to the table, and because the understanding is the guy wanted basically a turnkey thing.
Yeah.
He would have a number of us live on site, and then if something bad would happen, they would all congregate there. Okay, cool.
Yep.
But he ended up doing none of it. I mean, nothing.
Yeah.
They spent $2 million refurbishing and remodeling their $500,000 house because that's what she wanted. Well,
Wow.
okay, So
That speaks volumes. I mean, the person that you partner with.
Yeah.
So in my first marriage, she was not into the whole preparedness thing. It wasn't. She didn't care less. She actually looked at me and told me one time, Jeff, if the shit hits the fan, I hope I'm just going to be one of the first to go. And I'm like, what if you're not?
See, thank you. Yeah.
What if you survive it and now you got nothing? So she was very just. It wasn't that she didn't think anything was going to happen. It was more along the lines of she just didn't care and she didn't want to put any effort into it.
Well,
So then,
and I'm going to interrupt you there for just a moment. I apologize because I've run across this a number of times, doing the consulting like I do and stuff like that. And the term I got taught years ago was NSS, non-survival spouse. Okay.
Okay.
And I always love that term. I wish it was, I wish I had, could claim, oh yeah, that's mine. No.
Yeah.
But it's what I have found is that a lot of times people who have, a similar mindset to your ex-wife's stuff, it's based out of fear, because if they acknowledge that, something bad might actually happen, then at some level, consciously or subconsciously, they realize they themselves are going to be responsible for trying to fix part of that problem, even if it's just to the point of taking care of themselves. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people just flat won't do that. When my ex-wife and I got, together, I kind of classify people in three ways: preppers, sheeple, and the great unwashed. And to me, there's a huge difference. Sheeple is like someone like your ex-wife. Oh, I don't want to hear about it. Don't talk to me about it. It's just too horrible to contemplate. Yeah. The great unwashed simply aren't as informed of stuff because, they're working two jobs. They're a single parent. They're, that's over here. My world is right here because that's what I have to do to survive.
Yeah.
And, my ex-wife, God love her, we had gotten married, driven down to Las Vegas for a couple of days. And on the car ride back, it's basically when I, decided, oh, by the way, I do this and do this. I had the poor woman, trapped in a car for, like 4 hours. And she's just like, I caught the glance several times of like, oh my God, I have married a crazy guy.
Yeah.
But to her credit, she listened. She asked some awesome questions. And I was like, okay, after several hours, I told her, I said, okay, I've thrown a lot at you. I understand that. Please go talk to, this person, this person, this person, and this person at work. We worked at the state prison at the time, and, talk to them.
Yeah.
And about a week or so later, she came back to me because she had done her due diligence, and I give her a ton of credit for it. She had gone and talked to those people.
Yeah.
And then she come back to me and she says, okay, I don't understand it all, but I get it now. So how do we get started? And it made such a difference, having someone on board. It's like, honey, what do you think about this? Do you think we should get one? She's like, no, we should get two.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Yep.
And her having a medical background and stuff like that. And, so we had, it was great input from both sides. I mean, we were both fully on board and we understood, what the potential was, because, she had two children from a previous marriage, and then she and I had, my son and this and that. And so it's not that she was against it. She just had been in a situation for much of her adult life where, again, her world was right here through the reality of what was going on around her. Yeah. So it was just not stuff she was aware of. So I have an exercise I love to do with, like, when I go do a consultation, and I sit down with the client, and it's like, okay, there's two things I need you to do. And, you'll do this later after I leave. I said, first is you're going to sit down, pull out a piece of paper, and I want both of you to do this separate from each other. So, number your list, at least 3 items, absolutely no more than 10. Mm-hmm. But what I want you to write out, what do you feel are the realistic threats in your immediate area? Economic downturn, severe weather, maybe you live within, a quarter mile of a train track, so it might be a derailment, whatever. Okay. When you both have your list done, sit down and discuss it. And, with the attempt being, it's like, whoa, why'd you put that one on there? That's kind of interesting, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I had clients, I had two sisters. They lived together, good sized house, nice neighborhood, it's kind of outside town just a little bit. And they sat and did this because I always follow up, with my clients after the visits and stuff. And they did that. And it turns out the one sister had plans for her adult daughter and the daughter's fiance to come, shelter with them. Well, the other sister was not aware of that. It wasn't a problem. In fact, it made their situation even easier because they were going to have a lot more manpower. And so in the course of that conversation, so that's something I recommend, people do. The other thing is do an inventory. Okay. Now, doesn't mean, and I can't emphasize this enough because I've had this situation happen before. Don't get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, the pad of paper, and I am going to inventory my house today because here's what's going to happen. By the third hour, you're not going to be enjoying life. By the fourth hour, my name's being taken in vain. By the fifth hour, there's a contract out of my life because I'm going to get that son of a bitch who made us do this.
Either that or you've given up and just, I'm going to die. Exactly. I don't care. I'm going to die.
Right. And so it's easier to do. Maybe you do, like today, you do one room. And I'm not talking about counting the number of washcloths and stuff, but, food, water, fuel, communications, medical, defense.
Yeah.
And because you have to know what you have, because until you know what you have, you don't know what you don't have.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you get to do what I like to call target buying, because best analogy I ever heard about preps was from a guy I knew years ago. It was on one of the forums I was on at the time. He said, think of your preps as stacks of coin on a table. One stack is food, one's water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The long-term goal is we want to raise those stacks as evenly as possible. Because, I got 98,000 rounds of ammo and, 42 machine guns and all that. And I got 2 cases of MREs.
Yeah.
No, what that guy's not a prepper. That guy's going to be a raider.
Yeah.
He's going to be one of the people you want to avoid.
Yep.
So by doing targeted buying, you've only got X amount of dollars to spend. But if okay, food I'm kind of okay on, but I don't really have a ton of fuel right now. Okay. So for this month, it's going to be, and I'm a big proponent of what I call the food and plan. You buy food and this month fuel. Next month, you buy food and some medical supplies and, that handheld radio that you've been looking at, so that we can kind of get those stacks moved up. And because prepping is not it's not a fad. It's not a weekend project. It's not a feel good, I got, 2 boxes of canned goods in my front closet and, 4 candles, but I'm okay now. That's not what it is. It is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
But it's about the mindset, and there's never going to be a time. It's a journey, but there's no destination because there's always another skill to learn, another person to meet, another person to mentor. There's always, because your dynamic changes. Okay.
Yeah.
I lived alone for a long time. And then a few years ago, my son came to live with me. Okay. Change. I need to up the amount of food I have in the house because what was 6 months before isn't now. So,
Yeah. So when I started, that was my first wife, right? My ex. And it was difficult to implement any kind of plan because there was always going to be resistance, and our money matters were a disaster. They were a disaster. It was just flat out. There was no way we were going to be able to cooperate on any kind of spending. Fast forward 2 years, and I meet Erin, my current wife, and we were first dating. It was probably our second or third kind of So we did these getaways where we would go. There's a park nearby. Well, not nearby. It's about hour and a half. It's called Turkey Run. Turkey Run.
Yeah, I know where that is.
Yep.
Yeah,
so
that's
great park.
That's a beautiful area.
I will never forget. We were there, and we were hiking because we like the outdoors. And I said, well, there's something I haven't told you about me yet. I said, I'm one of these people that sometimes they call them preppers. I prepare for disasters and things like that. And I was kind of gauging, her response. And
Yeah.
I said, I know it's kind of weird. And she looked over her shoulder and she goes, oh no, I'm one too.
And you were like, what? Yes.
I was like, what? And she goes, yeah, I think something's coming. And, this was a year and a half before COVID.
Now, let me ask you this. Did you propose right on the spot or did you wait?
No, but it was, yeah. I was like, okay, let's do this. And I got to tell you, there are times, not as much these days, but there were times where she was, she was more into it than I was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it changed everything as far as the preparedness dynamic. When you have somebody who's on board, who's like, let's do this, let's do it this way. And the thing was her ex-husband before me, he was a major prepper as well. So that's kind of where she got it too. So it really helped. She's toned down a little bit. And I ain't gonna lie, it's a little bit frustrating because there's things like her 72-hour bag. So we went shopping for a 72-hour bag, and we got one, and then she kind of handed it off to me, and she was like, okay, go ahead and build it up. And I was like, well, you need to be part of this. You need to know what goes into it and how to use it. And she was like, no, I trust you. She was like, I trust you. And I was like, this isn't about trusting me. This is about you knowing your gear. And then I had a tent in mind, and I was like, we need to go out and buy another tent. And she was like, why? I don't want to spend that kind of money. And I was like, you need a tent. And she was like, well, you got one. I was like, right. But what happens if something happens to me in my bag? You're going to need a place to stay. And so there's still a little bit of disconnect there. But the biggest disconnect that it was an eye opener to me, and it's completely understandable. But she has 3 kids, and that currently all of them live close to us here in Indiana. One, and her oldest son is married. So she's talking about if shit hits the fan, all of them come here. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, all of them come. My idea was everybody has their own stuff. They only come here if they have to bug out. Her idea was they all come here. Now we have a lot of storage space, but that's a lot more investment, because now I'm planning for not just 4 people who are here in the house. Now my dynamic has increased to maybe doubled. 10 or 12. It's almost tripled. So that was an eye opener.
I'll bet.
But it's like you were talking about that, the exercise where you sit down and you compare notes. That was one of those, hey, we are not on the same page here. And so I would rather go over than, of course, go under. So I'm like, all right, fine.
Something to look at doing there, and naturally I got a story to go with that, but there's, and you've probably heard this yourself, but something called the 50-25-25 rule. 50% of your gear at your primary residence, 25% of your gear like pre-packed, loaded, ready to go, whether it's already loaded in a trailer, sitting in tubs in the garage or the basement or whatever. The remaining 25% at where you're going to. So that if you literally had to leave right from work and go, to your destination with nothing more than, what's in your car, well, when you get there, there's some stuff waiting for you. Yeah. Now, and those percentages, of course, are not in any way locked into stone, or anything like that. And that honestly is part of the justification I did with myself about buying that trailer today. Now, it's not a huge trailer, but because I already do have quite a bit of stuff preloaded, well, put on a trailer, throw straps over it, throw fresh food and, some more stuff in the truck, I can be on the road significantly faster than, a lot of my neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And will I have everything I own? Absolutely not. Will I have a much larger percentage of it? Sure, I do.
Yeah.
So, one of the groups I was with out west a number of years ago, we used to have a weekly, that particular prep forum had their own internal chat feature. And, we would get on it every week. And this was a number of households throughout the West Coast. It was a very loose coalition of, a lot of households. And it was a great way for us to share ideas and this and that. So we'd get, together in chat. And so we did an exercise one time, a load out exercise. Okay. You had to physically load. You didn't have to go anywhere, but you had to physically load what you planned to take, not just, well, that tub's in there. No, you had to put it in the vehicle or vehicles. Okay. Yeah. And our thing was, okay, we want a list of 3 things that went well for you and 3 things that didn't. So, we got together with chat the following week. Now, at that time, I had a full-size Chevy 4-wheel drive pickup. My wife had, a minivan. So, you take the middle seat out of the minivan. And, minivan, you can put a lot of stuff in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it was myself, my wife, and our 3 kids. And, our camping gear stayed packed all the time and this and that. And in my head, because, well, the gas cans are right by the camping gear and that's right by this, right? So, 1 or 2 kids in the pickup with me, 1 kid, in the van with her, and, stuff behind, stuff on the seat, stuff in the middle, blah, 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 blah. Oh, we'll be out of the house in, barely an hour. Wrong. 3 hours later, and we were just at that point. It's like, okay, now we're okay.
Yeah.
And so when we get into, chat that week, it was like, okay, how did it go for everybody and this and that? And, and it was interesting. That was one of the most common, quote unquote, issues that a lot of the people had. It's like, God, it took forever to get all of our stuff loaded.
Yeah.
The lack of a checklist of, what to make sure we take. Like, it's easy to forget things like your meds, a phone charger, the extra set of keys to where you're going, just stuff like that. And it was a very, very eye-opening
Experience
exercise, for a lot of us, myself included. I mean, I was the chat moderator and all that. And, so even, me, I'm sitting there going, well, I think I got a pretty good handle on this. Yeah. Hi, reality, which I'd like to come and have a chat with you.
We did.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
But so in your situation, what I would highly encourage them to do, and I don't know if I had shared this with you or not, and if not, I'll email it to you. We had a list we came up with kind of as a result of that chat of like recommended items, quantities, and stuff like that. And we, sent that out to everybody so that, like, if I'm expecting, if my location is where you're going to go to, okay, here's a list of what, you should either bring with you or have a portion of prepositioned at my place, and I'll do the same at yours.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And we used to call it a ticket list. And, we worked on that list for a long time and, modified it and stuff. And it's a solid 2 pages long, but it covers everything, from food through, recommended tools and stuff. Because if the situation's so bad, be it natural disaster or, whatever, that if I've got, to your place or vice versa, well, I want to make sure I'm able to contribute as much as I possibly can. Okay.
Yeah.
And there, of course, is the expectation, if I'm coming to your place, well, obviously you're going to expect me to pitch in and help, as you should.
Yeah.
So if I've got more of my stuff there and I can bring, the truck and trailer load plus the 6 totes or whatever I have pre-positioned at your house, now I'm not nearly as much of a burden. So psychologically, I feel better. It's easier on you, and we move through the situation easier.
And now you're an asset. You're not
exactly.
I'm
not just showing up with a shirt on my back going, okay, when's dinner, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, you're talking about the situations like that. We actually did a drill for our CERT team, and it was countywide. And
Okay.
we are split up into cities within the county, and we did this. It was a combination CERT and RACES, which is the ham radio.
Right. Yeah.
So it
I
was
have
a
a friend of mine
combination.
out west who's incredibly involved in that.
Yeah. So it was a combination RACES and CERT, and each CERT team was supposed to have a RACES person for their communications. And what we did is we got up morning at 9 o'clock on a Saturday, and a situation was going to happen. It was going to be a countywide situation, and they did the whole alert through our rave alerting system. I had to go in and alert my team here in the town that I'm in. And then we were supposed to meet at a certain location, and then there was going to be basically a moderator who was going to give us an envelope that it was many envelopes actually of what was going of this situation, and then we had to respond to it. We had to come up with a command post. We had to set up a triage area. We had to do the whole work. Okay, so we get there, and it's me and my wife. That's it for
What?
our city. And the situation was the New Madrid fault line cut loose. It's down there, and it cut loose, and major earthquake in our area. It was me and my wife, and our RACES contact didn't show up, so we had no form of communication. Now I had 2 Baofengs, and I wanted to test them. Now I'm not licensed, so I can listen.
Right.
I can't talk. Okay. So it was kind of a mess, but we got to test some of our equipment. We got to figure out what we were going to do if we had no communication. This is one of the reasons why I should have been doing it this today, and I didn't testing for my going for my amateur radio, but because I don't want to be in that situation again where I cannot communicate. But anyway, so there was another team. I'll never forget this. For our CERT, for our county, there's a running joke that the most common hair color is gray. Because, most of us are older and retired and whatever, right? But want to volunteer, and so we're on the CERT team, right? So there's this and this one team. There was this woman, a very nice woman. She's petite, and anyway, they sent her. They had a cache. They had a storage facility where they kept all their gear, very well stocked, ready to go. Right? They sent her to go to get the gear and meet at the command center. She's like, no problem. She gets there. She loads up most of the stuff, but there's the box with a lot of the critical stuff, including radios and stuff like that.
And she can't lift it.
Top shelf, and there's a ledge on the shelf, and it weighs probably 20, 30 pounds. She can't get it off there.
Yeah.
They had to send somebody else out to help her get that box down. So it's that kind of stuff, right? That logistically you have to think about, right? And I don't know. It was extremely eye-opening. We, the fact that it was just my wife and I doing all of this stuff, and she made me mad. I'm telling you now, Mark, she made me mad because I wanted to test the radios, and I said, okay, take these, and I want to take these envelopes. They had the situations. There was a collapsed bridge, car crashes, fissures opening up. All of this stuff was there. Was the hotel. Listen to me. The hospital. We got a helipad on the hospital. The helipad had collapsed, and the helicopter had fallen over. And the yeah, I know. It was really cool.
Anyway, it was a bad day.
It was a bad day. So this is like San Andreas with The Rock. It was waiting for the helicopter. Anyway, so
nowhere near as cool.
I know. So she goes. I told her go over there by the hospital, which was probably about a mile away or so. I said I want to see if these radios work. That's all I wanted to do was test the radio. She goes over there and she starts calling in situations, and I'm grabbing the clipboard and I'm like, oh crap, because I'm supposed to be the command center lead, of course. But now I'm actually the guy who writes the crap
The
down.
combo tech, yeah.
Yeah, she starts giving me all the information, and I'm like, what? And she goes way over on the other side of the hospital. But the thing is the radios worked great. They were fantastic. But I mean, she went way out, and I was like, if this was a real situation, I would have never let her go by herself.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And and if she would have gone rogue on me like that, boy, would I have been mad. But because I was like, you shouldn't have done that. But it was extremely eye opening. It was
Right.
kind of cool, and at the same time.
But that's part of that learning process too, because it's like, okay, if this is for real, then I know we can't let that happen. We can't do this, we can't do that. And it's funny you mentioned the L word, which is one of my favorite words. Virtually everything I do in life is viewed through the lens of logistics. It's I'm one of those people that, okay, it's not about getting from A to B. It's what's involved to get from A to B. Okay.
Yep.
Is A to B, Los Angeles to Albuquerque? Well, obviously there's a little more involved. Or is A, from here to the grocery store? Okay. Mm-hmm. But while I'm out, I need to go here, here, and here. Okay. And well, to accomplish this, I know I'm going to need the following. And, trying to set everything up so that, and this is one of the reasons that, I'm the self-proclaimed, prophet of inventory so much, because it's about logistics. You can have all of, and you alluded to it earlier, you can have all this great stuff. I have a Sam's Club size building full of prep supplies. I don't know how to use any of them. So what I have is a Sam's Club size building full of stuff.
Yeah.
Just taking up space. If you don't know how to
barter items,
a propane stove, if you don't know how to set up your tent, 9:00 at night when you're hot / cold, tired, wet, etc. That's not dark, the time to be trying to figure it out.
And you can't see anything. It's dark.
Yeah, thank you, because your batteries are dead because you don't have a spare, set, with them or whatever. And then that goes back to inventory, because not only does inventory help you figure out what you have and don't have, it also allows you to organize your preps, because, okay, well, it turns out I have 6 flashlights. All right. In the confines of the house, I have 6 flashlights. First one works. The second one doesn't have any batteries. The third one, oh man, it got kind of smashed by something, so it doesn't work. And the fourth one's in that junk drawer, and the fifth one's, over there. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, now A, you need more batteries. B, you put 1 flashlight in the master bedroom. You put 1 flashlight in the kitchen. You put 1 in the garage. You can organize your stuff better, so what you do have becomes more usable to you. But now I know, hey, I should probably buy another flashlight, and I need batteries, kind of thing. So there's so many small things about prepping. There should never be the expectation that, you need to do something prep related every single day of your life. That's not realistic, because, you're sick, you're working overtime, your significant other is sick, we got to go to Jimmy's, ball game, or, Janie's dance show, or whatever, it's called life. This is the real world that we live in. So, but if you've got a list of things you want to do, like I literally just glanced up. I've got my to-do list is on a magnet, on the side of the refrigerator. I've got several things marked off, but there's still more, that I wanted to do. And, I had this week off from work for spring break from my job. And yeah, I got quite a bit done. Did I get as much done as I wanted to? No. But
yeah,
my list was also not very realistic, probably.
Yeah, that's another thing that I kind of preach a little bit too. Is I call it prepper life balance.
Yes,
you always hear about work-life balance, and I'll never forget. My favorite show, Doomsday Preppers. I always refer to it, but there was a guy on there that that moved his family from Florida into the Appalachians, right?
Okay.
And they were talking to his wife, and she was cooking in the kitchen, and she was talking about, he does all this stuff because he cares for us. And but they hadn't had a vacation in 3 years. Every dime that they had went to prepping, and she started breaking down, and just out of the frustration that he's pulling their kids out of school, he's doing all this stuff, and that to me that is unsustainable. You have to have. I mean, yes, prepping is it's more than a hobby. It's more than something that you do on the weekends. It is an awareness, and it should become an integral part of your life. But at the same time, it shouldn't consume your life. And you got to have that. I mean, if you have a plan, you initiate it, you're constantly updating that plan. You're constantly looking at your preps. You're reviewing them. I usually say once every 6 months. It can probably be more frequently than that, especially with the seasons change. But it can't consume you, because it's, like I said, it's just unsustainable. You're going to drive yourself and your friends and your family around you crazy.
Well, it's another one of those great phrases, out of the prepping community. You prep to live, not live to prep. And that guy was definitely living to prep. And because if you're not, all the things that we do, all the sacrifices that we make, the time we put in during, doing training and this and that it is important, but it's not more important than missing Jimmy's baseball game or, her dance recital or, whatever actual life event is important. Okay. That's why we do those things, so that there's a greater sense of comfort in our lives, because I mean, the pace of life in our society is crazy. And so we need that balance, like a buddy of mine called me up yesterday and, or actually on Thursday, said, "Hey, what are you and your son doing for lunch?" And we went and had a really nice lunch, just nothing, just very spontaneous. Very enjoyable meal, had a great chat about some stuff. It was nice to get out and about. So, you have to do those kind of things. Like went to a bunch of us went to an estate sale, south of the next town over this morning. Turns out, there was nothing there that I couldn't live without, fortunately. But it was neat, it was actually someplace, an area of the county I'd never been. Okay, kind of cool. It was actually kind of interesting. It's like, I didn't realize there was that many people that lived out here. And, and got out of the house, kind of got out of town for, about an hour and a half. And it was something different. Now, had there been some interesting stuff there? Yeah, I was prepared to buy. But, this time it turns out it wasn't. On the way back into town, we stopped Tractor Supply, and I bought a few more tools to add to the ridiculous amount I have on hand. And we bought that trailer. Got it home, and we're going to start putting it to use tomorrow, because our yesterday project was trimming the big 30, 40, 50-foot mulberry next to the house, and we got most of it trimmed. The remains of it are now laying in my front yard waiting to be carted off.
It's something that I think that there are things that were okay. So prepping, I will say this: I believe that I've always said that prepping is an anxiety-driven practice. People prep because they are concerned about something. But here's a litmus test that I always tell people: if you go out and you have your plan and you institute your plan and it's coming along well, what does that increase or decrease your anxiety? Because I've seen people that, regardless of how much stuff they have and how much training they do and all this other stuff, their anxiety actually goes up. And they get more concerned. And it's like, okay, whoa, now you need to take a step back, because prepping should ease your anxiety. You should feel better. Nothing is going to guarantee survival and a big enough shit hits fan, right? But prepping edges your bets, right? It hedges your bets, is what I'm trying to say. It hedges your bets. It gives you a better advantage, a better chance of surviving and living through it well. People don't seem to understand that. They're like, if a nuclear bomb comes, you really think that bunker's going to help? It might.
You might.
If
I
the
mean,
bomb hits 5 miles that way and blows fallout my way, I've got someplace to go.
what if it misses entirely and lands 30 miles away because it was off target, or it lands in the ocean? I mean,
people
there's a
criticize
phrase that came up.
gets me. Yeah, that gets. I'm feeling it.
Well, nuclear war is not survivable. Yeah, actually it is. But
yeah, there was a kid who was a half mile away from the bridge, right? And he survived it. He lived up until the mid 2000s. It's like, okay, don't tell me it's not survivable.
So, well, there's the famous story about the one guy. He was in Hiroshima. He was in Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm.
The bomb went off. He survived. He was injured, and he was taken to Nagasaki, and he survived that one. That dude, there's no point in that guy buying a lottery ticket ever, because his luck
Nagasaki now. That's our next target.
Yeah, we're after that guy. That guy's really made me mad.
One dude. Yeah,
there's a phrase I came up with years and years ago, Jeff, and it was just one of those kind of flew out of my mouth and went, "Oh, wait a minute, I need to remember that." A preparedness lifestyle guarantees us nothing. It's about increasing both the quantity and quality of our options.
Yeah.
Because you can have, again, our mythical, Sam's Club sized building full of stuff, and all that. And you drink some contaminated water, or you get hit by a car trying to get to your bug out truck, your $80,000, Range Rover that'll do, whatever. What good does that stuff do you? Nothing. So, there's no guarantees. I mean, I was a firefighter, for God's sakes, in a fire truck and was in a vehicle crash.
Yeah.
How'd that work out for me? I mean, so is there any guarantees? Of course not. I mean, and when I'm doing, these consults and stuff like that, and, and I'm talking to these people, and it's like, look, you have got to understand, there is no product or technique that will guarantee your safety. None. Yeah. And I don't care what every salesman in the world, our product, a combination of the proper techniques and the proper products will improve your safety. It will not guarantee it.
And the rest of it comes down to luck, just raw.
Honestly, it really does. I mean,
we were talking about my ex-wife, and she was like, "Well, I'm just going to die." Well, what if you happen to be?
What if you don't?
Yeah.
Or what if you did and she didn't?
Yeah.
I mean, so again, it's prepping is one of those things that one of my least favorite terms in the world, hands down, is the average household. What is the average household? Because the average household in Prescott, Arizona is not the same as the average household in a little town in Maine.
Yeah.
Completely different needs. Mm-hmm. Water's not as big a deal in Maine. Water in, Prescott or Sedona, Arizona, I guarantee you, is a much bigger concern than it is in Maine. Okay. Yeah. They have honest to God winter in Maine. Okay. In, the Phoenix Valley, not really that big, So again, the average household is what? How many people? Is it, like my household is my son and I. We're both adults. Okay. And, you have multiple people in your household, different ages, different, life experiences, etc. So my household and your household are not the same thing. Ooh, light.
Yeah.
So, there was a blinding explosion. Wow, suddenly got very hot in here. But so how do you prep for the average household? Well, everybody's situation is different. The guy I mentioned earlier, the multimillionaire with access to that kind of money. Oh, buddy, let me tell you the kind of prepping that would be going on.
Yeah.
That's not the situation I'm in. I had to put, a trailer on a credit card today versus, my debit card. Okay. That's simple. That's the reality of my situation. Yeah. And so when I go out and I do these consultations, when I do these workshops and these seminars, ad nauseum, even when I wrote the book, preparedness book, there's a lot of, I very deliberately wrote it like I was talking to the reader.
Yeah.
It's written very first person. I did this and it didn't work out, but here's why it didn't work out for me.
Yeah.
My wife at the time and I, did this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because just because it didn't work for me doesn't mean it wouldn't work for you.
Yep.
Or I may do the exact same thing today and it works just fine. So I always try to be careful especially when I'm doing seminars and stuff about, I don't like to overgeneralize. Okay.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories to tell related to prepping. It was a trade show that I had put on over in Oklahoma City. This is probably about 8-9 years ago. And I had big semicircle of chairs out there, and I had about 50 people, sitting there. I had a gentleman sitting at my 10 o'clock. He was 3 rows back. And I was part of the way through my particular spiel. And I said, okay, ladies and gentlemen, may I get a show of hands, please? How many here have heard the phrase, it won't happen to me, it'll happen to somebody else? Well, of course, everybody's like, yeah. As soon as everybody's hands went up, I was like, newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, to me, each and every one of you is somebody else. And that guy, he'd been sitting there listening. He'd been kind of like this. All of a sudden, he was like, and I went, I got you.
Yeah.
That had never occurred to him. That, he wasn't ignorant by any means, but that reality had never, knocked on his door. And I actually felt, and I didn't even get a chance to speak to the gentleman, unfortunately, afterwards, but on the inside, I was smiling a great deal because I'm like, okay, if nothing else goes on today, I know I got through to that guy.
Yeah. He was one of the unwashed, as you put him.
Exactly. And, it was just, his whole body language changed. And I was just like, okay. I got through to him, and it felt really. A
couple hours later, with a cart full of just prepping supplies.
Give me some of this. Give me some. I need another cart, kind of thing. And it's, and hey, I've been that guy too. Even as long as I've been in the lifestyle, someone will bring some up, and I'm like, oh, duh. Yeah. Hello, Mister. I mean, I've had so many, I've gotten emails over the years from different people who've read the book and, or they'll contact my publisher and, she'll send me an email. Hey, so, this person bought the book and they'd like to, is it okay to, let them have your email so they can talk to you? And I'm like, absolutely, and I was communicating for quite a while with a very lovely lady out in Washington State. She was in her 70s at the time, but very into the lifestyle. And she was on fixed income and we ended up progressing to phone calls and stuff like that, and she had great questions. I mean, just fantastic questions. But here was a woman in her 70s and she was actively prepping. She's like, I don't care what life throws at me, I need to be ready for it. And I was just like, yes, ma'am. And so it's part of the reason we do all the things that we do. And I had a phone conversation earlier this week. One of the guys, he and I had been roommates together in the Marine Corps, and we still stay in touch. And he's retired from law enforcement now after 25 years, and he runs his own metal working facility and stuff like that. And he and I were actually talking. We had this very same conversation earlier this week about how people who think the way we do and people who adopt the lifestyle that we do and stuff, it's somebody has to do it. It's part of what separates us from, a lot of the general populace. Well, prepping is exactly the same. It isn't for everybody. Some people, you'll never convince them of the need to do it. You'll never get them to understand that what it ultimately comes down to is that, yes, Salvation Army and the Red Cross and FEMA and, all these other, non-government organizations, et cetera, will, eventually be there to help. But what do you do when it's 10 minutes, after that tornado or 10 minutes after that earthquake? Okay. Mm-hmm. I was friends with a guy for a long time. He was a New Orleans cop during Katrina. Their discovery that the levees had broke. They were in their cruiser, patrolling, turned the corner, and there was a wall of water coming at them. Oh, okay, that happened.
Yeah.
And, there were parts, there was areas down there. Representatives didn't get into the areas for 6 days after the event. And it wasn't to bring aid. It was start to assess what was needed. And it took, multiple days, so it's 5-6 days before somebody even shows up to ask what you need. What are you doing for those 5 or 6 days? It's your responsibility to ultimately take care of yourself first. Okay.
Yeah. So
I get people understand that.
Yeah, I think that there's two psychologically, they call it the locus of control, which is basically, you know what I'm talking about? So you have people that have an internal locus of control who we're that person. We are the ones we are responsible for what goes on, what happens to us. Then you have the external locus of control. That would be my ex-wife. Everybody takes care of her, right? And so the government's going to come. The government, I think, and this might be my naivete, I do believe that local, state, and even federal will eventually be there to help you. But that's a big eventuality, right? And that's why, even FEMA tells you 3 days. I think 3 days is way under the mark. Because
actually, the latest, and I apologize for interrupting, Jeff, the latest PSA that I saw was 14 days is what they're saying. Okay. And now that changed. This was about a year or so ago that I saw that. And I was even like, because for a long time, it was 3 days, it's just at 72 hours. About a year and a half ago, I saw, a FEMA thing, and we recommend you have 14 days. And I was like, whoa.
That's their window to get to you. And they've just opened it up a little bit more. So that's what I think, that's what they're doing. And that is more realistic, I think.
Completely agree. Yeah.
And it's not just FEMA getting to you either. I mean, coming from a guy who is a member of the county CERT team here, we're pretty tight knit, and it's where I live, the CERT, they have put money into the CERT program, and you don't get that in many counties at all. They put a lot of money into it, and they get a lot of money and return on investment out of it. And so they, here locally, we're going to be able to respond much quicker. But even then, there's still going to be a gap. Your first responders aren't going to be able to get to you, maybe especially if they're in trouble. Especially if their driver gets drunk and drives off of a cliff. They're having their own bad day.
Well, let me ask you this, and here's kind of one of those general throw it out to the world, questions. Do you know approximately what percentage of cities in the United States, population 25,000 or less, have their fire protection provided by volunteers?
Couldn't tell you.
It's over 90%.
Wow. Yeah. And where I used to live up north, in a different county, I was part of it was only for a hot minute. It was about a year. I was a volunteer fireman up there, but I was too far. I lived too far away from the station, so I couldn't respond very well. So I ended up throwing my hat there. But we get reports on how much money is saved because of volunteerism that goes on here. And it's phenomenal. To me, the way it speaks volumes for the community. But again, it depends on how long that disaster, that disruption is going to last, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, you look at, and I'm not trying to get political by any means, but you look at the summer of disruptions, BLM and Antifa were going crazy, dozens and dozens and dozens of cities. Their resources were absolutely just, completely maxed out. Yeah. And not just for like an hour or two. I mean, some of those towns, like Minneapolis, for example, it was days upon days where, there just was no personnel available. I mean, they were calling in mutual aid from, surrounding cities, counties, state police, et cetera. And I remember I was working in Las Vegas during both the Rodney King things. And I know I'm dating myself now, but I mean, with Las Vegas proximity to Southern California, of course, we got a lot of the Southern California news stations and stuff. And I mean, it was incredible how maxed out they brought up thousands of Marines out of Camp Pendleton to help and stuff, and it barely made a dent. And you're talking about these massive urban areas, Chicago, Dallas, Fort Worth, and New York City, LA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's only so many resources. Seattle right now is down to around 800 police officers for the entire city.
Wow.
And and Seattle's a really good, it's a fair-sized metropolitan area.
Yeah, that's a lot.
New York's got cops, retiring, transferring, quitting, in droves, and it's the same all over. Fire departments are underfunded because people are moving out of the cities, businesses are leaving because of various situations, and so again, I'm about roughly an hour west of a good-sized metropolitan area. The Oklahoma City metro area is probably about 1.2 million all total. Okay. There's one military base in Oklahoma City. It's an Air Force base. So, not a massive amount of personnel. There is one very good sized Army base here in Oklahoma. It's at Fort Sill, which is down by Lawton, which in and of itself is a good sized city. So whatever resources are coming out of Fort Sill, they're going to help in Lawton, and then they're going to be sent where? Well, it's not my little town. They're going to send it to Oklahoma City. I mean, and there's multiple small towns between, us and the city. So, I mean, there's no foreseeable help coming, to our little community because there just aren't the resources available.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of priorities. It's triage.
Yeah.
And so,
I think that in that situation, I would rather be in the small town.
Oh, that's one of the reasons I live where I live.
Yeah.
But it's what do these people want? So, so prepping in a nutshell, it's about being responsible for yourself and your immediate group, whether, significant other, children, whoever is in your immediate group. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that you touched on something that was kind of important too. You brought up the P word. You brought up politics, but the thing is that especially in this environment, it is so the country, regardless of where you fall politically, a disruption can affect you, even if it's on the same side. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that people get so heated and get so emotional that even people who politically would be on your side could cause you harm and could cause you disruption. So I think that's one thing to be aware of too, is that just being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Well, see, and you used a great word earlier in the broadcast, luck.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the day I got hurt, I left work 45 minutes early because it was my Friday. My relief officer happened to show up early. I had put in, 50 plus hours that week. And you know what? I was like, I'm going to leave 45 minutes early. Mm-hmm. Had I left at my regular time, I wouldn't have gotten hurt.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have been there. So, so an innocuous decision by me, a little over an hour earlier, ended up completely changing my life through no fault of my own.
Yep. Yeah.
So that's just life. I mean, people need to get away from this notion that, they're owed something, that's not fair. I hate that phrase. Well, that's not fair. Show me where it is carved deep in the living rock of the mountain that life is required to be fair. Yep. It doesn't exist. Life doesn't care if it's fair. Life doesn't care if you make it or not. It literally doesn't.
Yep. And that's why we prep.
Thank you. That's exactly why we prep. Because, why is it tornado went through and it wrecked that whole block except Frank's house? Frank's house is basically untouched, but his neighbor's house next door isn't even fit for kindling.
Yeah.
And you think, the one guy's not going to be pissed at the other guy over something he had no control over? Well, of course he is. because that's human nature, So what I would sum all of this great conversation we've had up to say is a couple of points, if I may.
Yep.
I would absolutely recommend doing the exercise I mentioned earlier. Sit down, at least 3 items on a page, no more than 10, what realistic threats you face in your own area. Okay. I would recommend having an inventory. And again, whether you do it by category, you do it by room, and then, break it down later, that's fine too. Whether you write it down, you do it in an Excel spreadsheet, just get it written down.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Another thing I would recommend, and I cannot emphasize this enough, you need to have cash on hand at home.
I agree.
Have it in a lockbox, have it in a safe, make sure it's secure. Don't have, $1,500 bills. They need to be small bills, easily, broken down and stuff, because if there's a power outage, ATM and credit cards aren't going to work. Okay. Yeah. Your debit card's not going to work. Yep. But, if you can walk in the grocery store and say, well, it's cash only. Okay.
There you go.
Cash is king. Okay. Never let your vehicle tank go below half. Okay. It's simply about having enough options. All right. Have an emergency plan for your family, whether it's, okay, if there's a fire, we're going to meet across the street, at their mailbox. Everybody go there. So we know everybody's out and safe. Okay. Have a family safe word. It's, well, oh, hi, you must be Janie. Your daddy sent me to pick you up from school. If that stranger doesn't know the safe word, don't go with them. It's just a lot of common sense things like that. The world, unfortunately, has some people in it who, let's just be very honest, are evil. Okay. Yep. The day I walked out of the prison for the last time, because I'd had enough, there was 3 things that I knew for an absolute fact. I would never, ever work in a daycare. I had seen all the ugly, naked men I had never wanted to see in life. Yep. And I had 0.00% of doubt that there was evil in the world, because I had just spent several years, putting handcuffs on it, having to, guard it, etc. And are there good people in the world? 100%, absolutely guaranteed. Okay. But in a situation, you have to exercise some caution. You have to use some common sense. You have to be the one to be your best protector. Okay. And courts already established that law enforcement's job technically isn't to protect you. That's been established in court. You can Google it, look it all up. I'm not a lawyer, but trust me, that's been proven in court, because people have tried to sue the police departments. Oh, they weren't there to protect me. And the courts, back law enforcement. They're not there to protect you. And they're not. Law enforcement is going to react to what happened to a situation. Okay. Yeah. And please understand, I'm in no way knocking law enforcement. I'm former law enforcement. I still have family and friends who are cops, etc. Yeah. But, we have to get, real about it.
Yeah.
What's that great phrase? When you're in trouble, help is minutes away. And it's the same thing. You have to be the one, when it gets dark out, go outside, walk around your house. What can you see inside? If you're looking at your house the way someone who's never been there is looking at it, what are they going to see? Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, you can see right down, you can see all the way down the hallway, or you can see, into the kitchen, or, things like that. There's things that we can do to, better protect ourselves. When you drive with the doors locked. I hate seeing those videos of people, they're chasing this carjacking suspect, and he runs out and
opens the door, opens the door right away. It's like,
well, if the door's locked, guess what?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
If you're driving down the road and you stop at a red light and somebody tries to get inside your car, drive.
Go.
Move.
Drive.
Yeah. Don't sit there and go, what are you doing?
Oh my, I was, don't. Okay. If you are comfortable with owning a firearm, and I understand not everybody is, and I respect that. Okay. I am not one of those people that, well, everybody should have a gun. No.
Yeah.
Oh no. No. I worked armed security and law enforcement too many years to believe that. If you can handle the financial, ethical, moral, and legal responsibilities of owning a firearm, then please do so.
Yeah.
Okay. But train with it. Don't
Yeah.
stand there once every 3 months, fire 50 rounds at a static paper target on an indoor range and think you know what you're doing, because you're doing yourself a disservice, and all you're doing is, criminal's going to end up with a nice handgun. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm permanently partially disabled, and I train harder now than I did when I was on the SWAT team. Okay. Because I am disabled. So I know I'm at a disadvantage. So I have to work harder. Okay. I practice shooting from my back, shooting from, my stomach, laying on my side, shooting and moving, shooting one-handed, weak-handed, and stuff. I mean, now I understand you got to look around to find the right facility that you can do that out. And I get that, but it's worth the time and effort. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not one of these idiots who oh, I'm a firearms first guy as far as prepping goes. A firearm is, in my opinion, Jeff, is no different than an eyeglass repair kit, a screwdriver, a can opener.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place for each tool, each piece of equipment. Okay.
Yep.
But these idiots who are out there, well, I got all the guns and ammo I need. Okay. Well, I know who just became the biggest threat to me. All right. Thank you, buddy, for that piece of information.
Yep.
And I'm not being cynical when I say that. That's actually useful information for me, because, if I see him at the end of the street and it's 3 days after an event, my alert level just went up. Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like the guy who's got the tactical rifle in the back of his in the truck.
Yeah.
He's driving down the road, or he's got the
but he's got no food or water in the truck.
And Wesson, it's like, okay, that's the vehicle I'm going to break into and get a free gun.
Well, exactly. I mean, so guns are the sexy, cool part of prepping. Okay, yay, big deal. Do I feel that firearms play a role in preparedness? 100%. But it's the right time and place. Okay. Yeah. I mean, granted, we didn't touch on this quite as much, so I'd like to take just a minute and do so. There's a lot of places in the country, honestly, it's not crazy safe to go. Okay. Have you seen all the stuff that's going on over in France, for example, right now?
Yeah.
That's it. Whoa.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things of like, yikes. There's certain parts of, the country that, you don't want to be in after certain hours, and sometimes even during the day.
Yep.
You have to keep your head on a swivel. I'd like to see everybody that's watching, listening, at some point, please do me this favor and do this small bit of homework. I want you to go on Google, and I want you to Google Cooper's color codes. They're named after Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Cooper, who was Marine. It was a system that he devised. Each color relates to a different level of awareness. And I won't get into it more than that, but it's Cooper color codes. It's a real short little thing on the internet, but it's absolutely a great learning tool.
Yeah.
And you have to be aware of what's going on. Okay. I live in a small town, in Western Oklahoma. When I went to Walmart earlier today, yes, I was carrying concealed,
exactly.
And,
I do the same. My wife will come up and give me a hug and go, "Oh, you're packing today, huh?" I was like, yeah. Had to go out and do something. Yeah.
Exactly. And there was not the slightest hint of any point that, I was going to need it. And I'm completely fine with that. In fact, I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
Because, but it's about not just protecting me. I mean, if there's, somebody there grabs a fire extinguisher off the wall and he's, going to, hit somebody and potentially kill them with it.
Yep.
That's a situation. It's not just about protecting me. It's about protecting other people in the right circumstances. And yes, you should do it legally. I mean, I'm a member of the United States Concealed Carry Association, USCCA. One of the things that USCCA offers is insurance. Okay. Mm-hmm. I pay that fee happily. It comes right out of my, checking account every month. It provides me liability insurance and legal representation should the circumstance ever arise, that I have to use my weapon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I pay that fee a month. I don't blink about doing it because it's part of the responsible ownership of firearms, in my opinion.
Yep.
Okay.
I agree.
And so, prepping is It's not easy. Okay. There's no magic mantra. There's no, well, I'll go out and buy 2 buckets of this and a bag of that, and, this, that, and the other, and I'll be good. Will you be in better shape? Yes. Is it going to guarantee your safety? Absolutely not.
And you can't really rush it either.
No.
I will never forget this, when Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yep.
And they started talking about nuclear, ramping up the nuclear talk. In one of the prepping forums that I'm on Facebook, there was a woman who got on there, and she was basically, I need to know what to do right now. I need to know what supplies to buy and where to go and what to do, because she was convinced that the flip was going to get switched. The switch was going to get flipped at any given point in time. Yeah, one of those two. And so it was just, people were trying to, some people were like giving her good advice about, well, do this and do that and go here and learn, learn. Other people were like, calm down, she was in, you could tell by the post that she was in a full-blown panic. And it's, so,
and I hate that. I hate
it's something that you have to do. And you have to do it. You have to do it now, and you can get started, and you can learn and buy books and watch videos and on and on and on. And on that note, Mark, we're coming up on time, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to plug your book. So, where can people go to get your book? What's your book titled?
I've got a couple of them. I've got both fiction and nonfiction. The preparedness book is called Preparedness: The Basics and Beyond. Okay. It's available on Amazon in either print form, or it is available, for Kindle. Okay. Interestingly enough, the last time I had talked to my publisher about it, the book is sold in 10 different countries around the world, which is just, I get such joy out of that. When it first started happening, my friends had a contest going to see how many different ways I could work the term internationally selling author into a conversation. The last time I knew, it was 37. But
there you go.
It's, again, I'm very, very proud of the book. I stand by it. It's got a lot of great information in it. Is it, again, that be-all, end-all book of prepping? Well, no, but I think it's a really good book.
Good.
There's a book came out about a year ago. It's prep fiction. It's called Withdrawal, also available on Amazon. And it's coincidentally set right here in Western Oklahoma. I don't know why. It seems weird.
Right.
It's about a group. It's book 1 of the series. There's going to be 8 books in it. Book 2 is at the publisher right now. It's about a group. It's set in present day. It's about a group of people, family and friends, trying to survive in a post-economic collapse America, and had a tremendous amount of fun writing it. And book 3 is coming along really well. Big shout out to my friend Scott Burns, who's the co-author on that. That book has sold international, and we've gotten a tremendously, great response to it. Oh, we really like it. The characters seem realistic, etc. And you can, my business, which is called Preparedness Consulting Associates, you can just check me out on Facebook. And, if you've got any questions or whatever, please feel free to hit me up. And if there's something I can, sir?
You're on Twitter as well, right?
Yes. I am. Thank you. I completely forgot that. Yep. It's.
I'll put a link.
Yeah, that's good, because I literally just went brain dead.
I think I put a link on the announcement for this.
I think you did, yeah. Prep Consulting 1. Prep Consulting, then the number 1. Can't believe.
Yeah, it happens.
One of those great things as we get older.
Oh,
but please, if people have a question, my email's on the Facebook thing. You can hit me up on a DM on Twitter, and if there's something I can do to help, and if I don't know something, believe me, you're going to get some variation of the answer. You know what? I don't know that, but let me see what I can find out.
Yep.
Because hey, if I don't know something, it means it's something I need to learn too, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So
never ending.
And there you go. So Jeff, I'd really like to thank you for having me on tonight. I really enjoyed it, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely, Mark. Thanks for spending some time with me, having this conversation. there's just a crap ton more. I think we could have
Oh
just
yeah,
gone on.
we
and
didn't
on
even
and on
we didn't
about.
even remotely scratch the
No,
surface.
not at all. So we will definitely do this again and very soon. All right,
Okay.
Mark. Have a good
Thanks
evening.
very much, everybody. Have a great night.
Yep,
Stay
thank
safe.
you. Take care.